am going to start right away. Hopefully, I am sharing my screen. Yes, I am, because I am under the weather today and I want to be able to cover this nicely and quickly. So the topic today, we're going to talk about the basics that you should know about sugars. Quick introduction for those who don't know me. My name is Wilize Maleombho. I'm a licensed nutritionist and a wellness coach. I have a platform that is called Zeli Wellness. It's a digital platform that helps people develop a healthier relationship with food. We have wellness booklet, detox supplement, online courses, wellness program, and virtual consultation. As a disclaimer, all the content we are sharing today are for informational purposes only. It does not establish a client and provider relationship. Let me just put my notes here. Put they were here. All right. So today's topic is pretty cool. Um, uh-oh, I hope everybody can hear me. It looks like okay. So today's topic is pretty cool. We're going to talk about everything sugar. We're going to start by recapping last week's topic. We're going to talk about the story of sugar, as we always do. We're going to talk about the impact of sugar on our health. And then we're going to close up with practical tips to monitor our sugars. And this time I'm going to do it a little different. I'm going to leave the last section for Q&A, about 2 minutes for us to go over any questions that may come up. So as I'm going through this lecture, please make sure that you record or take notes of any question that you have, and then I will address them towards the end of the lecture. So last week recap, love last week. We talk about neurotransmitters and sugar cravings. We talk about the story of neurotransmitters, so what they have, what they are. Oh, there is something in the chat. Hey, okay. So we talk about what they are, the impact that they have in our body. We specifically focus on serotonin because serotonin is one of those neurotransmitters that have a big impact, especially on our cravings, specifically our carbohydrate cravings, so specifically our sugar cravings. And we talked about how when you have an imbalance of serotonin for whatever reason, it can lead to cravings of sugar. And we talked about certain tips and tricks that you can use in order to balance the serotonin in your body. So it makes sense that now that we talked about all of the things that may affect why you may not lose weight, that and we ended off with serotonin and sugar craving. Now we talk a little bit about the actual macronutrients in the next few lecture. And the first one up is sugar. All right. So we're going to start with the story of sugar. So, besides the fact that it tastes very sweet, that we add it to our cooking in order to make certain dish sweeter, that it is the first form of solvent, I guess. Can you even say that word? That is the first form of something that helps you relax, right? Because the mother's milk, although it has a lot of protein, one of the main thing that it helps to do with the child, it helps to soothe the child because of the sugar content that is found in the breast milk. So sugar plays a lot of roles in our lives, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. It has received a lot of backlash not because of what it does and the role that it plays, but more so because of how it has been used over the years. Whether it has come from a form of processed carbohydrates like sweets, like ice cream, like candies like cookies, or whether it has come from the form of a starch, right? Like rice, like grains, like starchy vegetables like potatoes, like plantains. Oh my gosh, I love plantains. Like these form of starches, they are all carbohydrates and they all are a form of sugar. So let's talk about it. Okay, so when you eat, I talked about it before in previous lectures, but I'm going to reiterate that here is a lot of times it helps when you're trying to be health conscious to remind yourself that when you're eating, you're not only eating for you. I'm not only eating for Wilize, for Nana in the chat, you're not only eating for Nana. Whoever is watching this on YouTube, you're not only eating for yourself, you're actually consuming food, although it is very pleasurable. You're consuming food to fuel the cells that are in your body that are like miniature workers that help you breathe, that help you think. You also have the healthy bacteria. A lot of people talk about gut microbiome. These are healthy bacteria that collaborate with us in order for us to operate optimally. But there are also bacteria everywhere. It's not just the gut. There's bacteria wherever you see a mucous membrane, like in your mouth, there is bacteria. In your vagina, if you're female, there is bacteria. These healthy bacteria help our body operate properly. And whenever you are consuming food, you're not just consuming it for your pleasure, you're consuming to help fuel these healthy bacteria or these cells for them to do their job properly. Okay, I also talked about how, for instance, when we're going to get into the protein, everything that you see on your body is made up of food. So our skin is made up of a protein called collagen. Our hair is made up of something similar, our nails. Everything that we see, whether it be from the outside or on the inside, is made up of food. So what has helped me when I'm thinking in the health conscious way is that I remind myself that yes, food is supposed to be pleasurable. I'm eating for my own pleasure, but I'm also trying to eat to fuel all of these workers inside of me that work day and night to make sure that I have the best experience in this life. So, part of the fuel that we provide them are carbohydrates. So, carbohydrates are part of a group of nutrients that we call macronutrients. We're going to go into the micronutrients, but right now we're focusing on the macronutrients. Micro is a Latin word, I believe, that means that you need that nutrient in a large quantity. And you need it in a large quantity because it has the ability to provide our body with energy. Now, I have a lecture that I've done before where I talked about calories and how calories is a form of energy. Energy is what is the currency that your body uses to do just about everything. So me talking to you guys right now, my body needs energy. Me moving my hands, my body needs energy. These are voluntary movements, but involuntary movements such as breathing, your heart beating, what is another involuntary movement? Anything that goes on, like your immune system fighting diseases. Right now, I am sick and my immune system is going through it, y'all. But I'm lucky enough to know what type of nutrients I need to fuel my body to make sure my immune system is armed to fight whatever bacteria is going through me right now. But even that, they need energy. So when we're talking about micronutrients, these are nutrients that you eat in large quantities because they provide energy. Carbohydrate is actually the number one nutrient used by your body that is transformed into energy. Okay, so that is them. When we think about carbohydrates, we have to think about energy. That's the number one thing that carbohydrates are known for. They're known for a lot of other things, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, do I go over that? Okay, no, not yet. So they are known for a lot of other things. People don't know that carbohydrates are used to build your DNA. DNA is how your ancestry is passed on to each other, right? That's how DNA, the way I see DNA is like your storybook. All of the ancestors that ever went through this life in order for you to be here, they shared and passed on their DNA to you. And RNA, another part of the storybook, right? Carbohydrate is actually used by your body to create those. So it's super important. It's not just for energy. That is why, I'm inclined to tell people to follow. a low carb diet, but I'm not for a no carb diet because carbohydrate is still super important to your life in general. And one last thing, a lot of people don't know that carbohydrate is actually used to make red blood cells. So the blood in your body actually it needs carbohydrates in order to create itself. And the last note I'm going to give about carbohydrates, and I'm saying this because it is still very important in your diet. You don't ever want to bash any nutrients from your regimen. You just have to learn how to consume them. And I'm hoping after this seminar, we're going to have a better webinar, we're going to have a better idea how to do that. One last thing is your brain. Your brain only use carbohydrate in the form of glucose, which we'll talk about here, to fuel itself. So without carbohydrates, none of the things that I just talked about can actually happen. Okay. So, going back to where I was saying that when you consume food, you want to think about consuming food in a way where you're fueling the cells that are working in your body. Now, think about it. These cells are super small. You can't even see a cell with your bare eye. You have to use what is called a tool that is called a microscope, okay? Because the cell is that small. So, think about it. When you're eating the bowl of rice, so when you're eating the carbs, excuse me. Ooh, you guys. Ooh, this cough. Sorry, one second. I've been under the weather, but I'm like, I'm gonna do these webinars, okay? All right. So, when you're eating this bowl of rice, if you're fueling something that's that small, it has to be broken down to its smallest unit. So this is where these glucose, fructose, and galactose come from. So I'm sorry, let me catch my breath a little quickly, y'all, and then I'll jump right back in. Being sick suck. This is why I do all of these webinars, okay? Because being sick, your health is your most precious thing. Everything else you can buy, everything else you can get back, but time and health, the most precious thing. Anyways, all right. I think my throat is feeling a little better now. All right. So when you eat a bowl of rice, if you're trying to fuel something like a cell or a healthy bacteria that lives in your body, they can't eat the rice that you're eating, right? It has to be broken down. So that's the job of your digestive system. Your digestive system is going to break down whatever food that you're eating to its smallest unit. And when we're talking about carbohydrate, there's three different smallest unit. Glucose is one. A lot of people are familiar with glucose because glucose is the only one that can circulate in your blood. Fructose. Fructose is from the sugar that comes from fruits. Okay. Um, and once you digest that, once it gets into your body, your liver is going to change that to glucose. And then you have galactose, which combined with glucose form lactose. So a lot of people are more familiar with lactose because you hear a lot about lactose intolerant. Um, these are people who don't have the enzymes that helps to break down the lactose into the galactose and the glucose. Hope that makes sense. So when you eat something, you have these workers, these protein workers that are called enzymes that break down whatever you eat into the smallest unit. So a lot of people are familiar with glucose. Not too many people are familiar with fructose, but fructose is actually more sweet than glucose. And like I said, it is found in fruit. And then galactose is found in milk. So I just wanted to share that with you guys for your knowledge. Um, but a lot of times when you're doing exams and you're doing tests or whatever, they are measuring your glucose because glucose is the only one that can circulate in your blood. All right. Okay. So the impact of sugars. So the first thing I want to talk about is sugar in your blood. There's a specific level of glucose that has to stay in your blood. If it's lower, then that's that level, you're going to get hungry and your body is going to ask that you consume more food. Mainly it might ask you to consume more carbohydrates. So that's where sometimes cravings come from. If it goes above, it's not good at all. Why? A lot of people don't know that sugar acts as an acid in your blood. That's very key because when I work with clients who have any type of heart disease like hypertension or diseases of the cardiovascular system, they always focus on the fats because based on previous scientific evidence way back in the day, it was correlated with an unbalanced level of fat in your blood. But a lot of people forget the part that it's not that they forget, it's just these studies have come a little later that glucose actually erodes the blood vessels because it acts as an acid if it's too much in your blood. That is why the body created insulin. So I talk a lot about insulin throughout these series, but insulin is a super important hormone whose main role is to make sure that the sugar in your blood is balanced. Because everything that your body creates is to help protect you. And if you have too much sugar in your blood, like I just said, it is going to act as an acid and erodes your blood vessels. So if anybody comes to you with, now you guys know this, okay? I'm not saying that you guys are nutritionists, but if somebody comes to you like, oh yeah, I'm reducing my fat levels in my regimen and my sodium levels because of my hypertension or my cardiovascular condition, tell them you may want to take a quick look at your sugar intake as well, your carbohydrate intake, okay? All right. And lastly, the impact of excess insulin in your body. So we talked about that when we talked about the hormone. But what I wanted to point out here is so everybody knows much about the two types of diabetes. You have type 1 diabetes is when your body cannot create insulin. And you have type 2 diabetes is when your insulin is not being reciprocated by the cells in your body, is not being received by the cells in your body anymore. Now, a lot of people wonder how that happens. That often happens by the consumption of the food that affects insulin the most. And out of all the macronutrients, carbohydrates have a higher effect on insulin. And because of an overconsumption of sugars, okay, you tend to start messing up the way your insulin is supposed to be released. Okay. So the good thing about type 2 diabetes, if you ever have type 2 diabetes, is if you change your regimen, if you change your diet, if you stop asking for your body to produce more insulin than it actually needs, your body will rebalance itself. Okay. All right. So practical tips to monitor sugar. I feel like there's one more thing I wanted to talk about the impact of sugar. Okay. Let's go to the practical tips to monitor our sugar. So, this is my favorite slide. You can tell I took some time to find this out because I feel like this is going to be very helpful for people who are trying to monitor their sugar. So, you have natural sugars versus added sugar in foods. You're not going to find that in non-processed food, but I rarely find someone who eats just non-processed food, just natural food. That's where we aim to be. But There are some times when you want to eat something quick or when you have a quick snack, and usually these things are going to be processed. So, things that you want to look out for if you want to monitor your sugar levels, um, we're going to talk about that in this slide. So, first, food have natural sugars, but most processed food have added sugars. So natural sugars are going to be found, for instance, in fruits. And we talked about earlier how fructose, which is actually sweeter than glucose, is found in fruits. You have starches, such as grain, they have their natural form of sugar. And usually people who consume those foods in a moderate amount don't usually have an issue, right? But when you start consuming processed, you may fall into added sugar. So the number one food with added sugars in America are beverages. I thought that was so interesting because I think a lot of children in America are starting to develop diseases that are supposed to be for adult. Something like fatty liver, um, it's not supposed to be found in a child, and it's most likely from the high corn syrup. Not even most likely. There are studies after studies after studies that have found that fatty liver is very correlated with the high fructose corn syrup, which is found in beverages a lot, in a lot of processed things, but specifically in beverages. And that's the number one thing that kids always ask. Juice, can I have some juice? And we feed them juice without even thinking about that twice. So something to think about because people think because you drink it, you're not going to add on calories, you're not going to add sugar. It actually shoots up your insulin faster than anything else because it's not being processed. It directly goes into your bloodstream. Number two, pay attention to labels that have low fat or fat free. You know, I love a keto diet, so I am always against low fat or fat free. But if your healthcare practitioner asks you to be on one of those regimen, pay attention to the labels because usually they substitute the fat with some type of sugar. So it's going to have some added sugar. Okay. Um, Now the current label doesn't specify to find out if there is added sugar, look at the ingredients. Look for names that also mean sugar. So current label, I'm talking about this right here. So I have the current label and new label. Most food nowadays are fall under the new label where you will see the included number of sugar, like 10 grams of added sugar. That's so much. This food contains 37 grams of sugar. That's a lot. Okay. Old labels used to just say sugar, and you wouldn't know if it was the natural sugar of the food or if it was added sugar. Luckily, now we have added sugar. But sometimes you still have to dig in. You still have to make a little bit more investigation to find out if the food has added sugar or not. So things to look out for is you'll have a specific name and then follow it with like, and then it will be followed by sugar. Okay. So do they have that here? Yeah, they will have like brown sugar or something sugar. If you see that, sugar has been added to the food. Okay, another way in which you could find if you have added sugar to your food is if the name of whatever you're looking for end with a OSE, like dextrose. These are usually names of sugar. In the scientific world, sugar end with OSE. And then anything that has syrups, okay? Any syrups that's added to the ingredient is going to have sugar. Any malt, okay, any molasses or a name like turbinado. So these are like off names. You won't typically see that, but if you see that name, it means that there's a sugar added to the food. So when I do the recap for this webinar, I'm going to also add a list that has the name of the different sugar, but putting this slide here to let you guys know that a lot of processed foods has added sugar. And you always, when you're reading the label, you will always want to investigate a little bit more. You want to pick foods that have a a little bit of ingredient listed. If they have too many ingredients that you can't read, stay away from that because they're not only going to have sugars, they're going to have preservatives. They're going to have so many additional stuff that is not good for your system in general. Um, and if we want people to consume natural foods, but if you're not going to do that, make sure that you read your labels. Okay, now we have 4 minutes left. I left this section for Q&A. And then I didn't know if you had specific questions about this lecture so far. Oops. Thank you. I hope I feel better too, man. You know, it's me being in Mexico. Uh-oh, are you speaking? Oh Lord. I feel like I have to change that here. No, I can't hear you. Are you speaking? Mm, let me see the chat. Well, that's not good. I can't hear. Can you hear me? Okay, maybe if I exit the full screen here. Well, if you have any question, if you have any question, you can write it in the chat and then okay, no questions. Okay. Well, for those who, let me put it back. If you do have any question, you can contact me at contact@zelywellness.com. We're here every Thursday. I will not be here next Thursday because it is a holiday. But we have books coming out. We have weight loss courses coming out. We have a whole bunch of stuff coming out. We have live activities, live webinar coming out. So stay tuned. All right, let me stop the recording.